Welcome back. If you spend the next 10 minutes watching this video, I'll help you to understand photosynthesis and limiting factors better and show you how to get better marks when you're answering exam questions on the topic. There's also a quiz at the end so you can check how much you've understood. If you're new here, welcome to BioSmash. I'm Jo, I'm a science teacher. I'll help you smash your biology revision. Let's start by making sure we understand what limiting factors are. To help you to remember and understand the key ideas, I've made up a story. It might seem a bit random at first, but bear with me. If you already feel very confident about what limiting factors are, then feel free to jump ahead to the next chapter. Your class is raising money for a local charity, so you decide to set up a stall selling donuts. You get to work and make a big bowl full of dough. 1 hour later, you've made 6 donuts. Let's draw a graph to show the number of bowls of dough versus the number of donuts you can make in 1 hour. If you have no bowls of dough, you can't make any donuts, so we'll put a big cross here. With 1 bowl of dough, you can make 6 donuts. You decide to make 2 bowls of dough so that you can make more donuts. An hour later, you have 12 donuts. So 2 bowls of dough allows you to make 12 donuts. This tells us that the amount of dough you have is a limiting factor because if you add more dough, you can make more donuts. Next time, you make 4 balls of dough. However, an hour later, you still only have 12 donuts. Let's mark this on our graph. If we draw a line, you can see that initially, as we add more dough, we get more donuts, but we reach a point where even if we add more dough, we can't make any more. Our graph looks something like this. This is a 2-part graph. In the first part, there is something that's limiting the number of donuts we can make, and that was the amount of dough that we had. However, in the second part of the graph, something else is limiting the number of donuts we can make. Even if we add more dough, we can't make any more donuts because we haven't got enough of something else. Let's go back to our recipe. What else could be slowing us down? You realise that you just don't have time to ice that many donuts in 1 hour, so you recruit your friend to help you with the donut making. With his help, you manage to make 18 donuts in 1 hour. So if we draw a graph of the number of people versus the number of donuts we make, you can see that adding more people gives us more donuts. You decide to ask another friend to help, giving you a team of 3. And a team of 3 means you can make even more donuts. Next time you decide to have a team of 4, so you ask 3 of your friends to help. However, you still only manage to make the same amount of donuts as when you had 3 people on the team. Let's look at our graph. It's again a 2-part graph, and in the first part, we've got a limiting factor. That limiting factor is the number of people helping. With more people, we get more donuts. However, eventually, even if we get more people to help, we can't make any more donuts, and that's because something else has become the limiting factor. You realise that the limiting factor now is the number of sprinkles. You only have 1 tube, so you can only decorate 1 at a time. Now that we understand what a limiting factor is, let's look at them in terms of photosynthesis. Give this video a thumbs up if you're starting to understand this topic better. Just like humans making donuts, plants also produce food. They do this through a process called photosynthesis. To carry out photosynthesis, the plant needs 2 ingredients, which are carbon dioxide and water. These react to make glucose and oxygen. I haven't got time to explain this reaction in lots of detail, but I have made a video all about it, so I'll link that above and below, so check it out if you think that would be helpful. So the reason that the plant does photosynthesis is to make glucose. It doesn't really want to make oxygen, it just happens to make it as a waste product. Let's look at the effect of carbon dioxide levels. Let's examine a graph looking at the rate of photosynthesis, which is how quickly photosynthesis happens. We'll put concentration of carbon dioxide on the x-axis. It's important to use the word concentration rather than amount because it's more scientific. Like the graphs earlier, this is a 2-part graph. In the first part of the graph, as you give the plant more carbon dioxide, the rate of photosynthesis gets faster, so this tells us carbon dioxide must be the limiting factor. But as the concentration of carbon dioxide continues to increase, the rate of photosynthesis levels off or plateaus, which means something else is now the limiting factor. In order for the plant to carry out photosynthesis, it needs light energy. When the light intensity is lower and the plant has less light, it can do less photosynthesis. If the light intensity increases, the plant has more light energy, so it can carry out more photosynthesis. So it may be that in this part of the graph, the plant has got plenty of carbon dioxide, but there isn't enough light for it to photosynthesize any faster. We can draw a graph comparing the rate of photosynthesis with light intensity. To start with, as we increase the light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis gets faster. So this tells us that light is the limiting factor. But as we keep increasing the light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis plateaus and doesn't get any faster. This means that something else is now limiting the rate of photosynthesis and slowing the reaction down. This factor could be carbon dioxide concentration, but it may also be temperature. Here's a graph showing what happens to the rate of photosynthesis as temperature goes up or increases. You can see that in the first part of the graph, as the temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. So this tells us that temperature must be the limiting factor. However, after a point, as the temperature keeps increasing, the rate of photosynthesis starts to decrease until it eventually stops altogether. And I've marked here the maximum rate of photosynthesis, which is when photosynthesis is at its fastest. To explain this, we need to remember that photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, and chemical reactions happen when molecules move around and collide. If the colliding molecules have enough energy, they will react to form new chemicals. If you needed to explain this in an exam, you could write, as temperature increases, the molecules gain more kinetic energy, so the rate of reaction increases. And this explains why, as you increase temperature, the rate gets faster in part 1 of the graph. Let's think about why the rate starts to decrease at very high temperatures. It's all to do with the fact that enzymes carry out chemical reactions in plants. I haven't got time to explain this reaction in lots of detail, but I have made a video all about it, so I'll link that above and below, so check it out if you think that would be helpful. Just try to remember that the reacting molecules collide with the enzyme and fit into the enzyme's active site. So here you can see the green and blue molecule are in the active site. However, at very high temperatures, the enzyme actually changes shape. We say that the enzyme has become denatured, and this means it can't carry out its job anymore. So this explains why at high temperatures, the rate of photosynthesis starts to decrease. It's because the enzymes are denaturing. In an exam, you may be asked to explain why the rate of photosynthesis decreases at high temperatures. And you could write something like this: as temperatures increase, the enzymes denature, so the rate of photosynthesis decreases. As promised, I've pulled together some questions for you so you can see how much you've understood. I've tried to use questions similar to those you might get in an exam. So here's question 1. Can you name 3 factors that may limit the rate of photosynthesis? Pause the video now if you want more thinking time. I really hope you're finding this video helpful. If you are, then please do click subscribe. It will help you to find my other videos. The first factor is the concentration of carbon dioxide. Remember, it's really important to use the word concentration rather than amount. The second factor is light intensity. And again, we don't say amount of light, we say light intensity. And the third factor is temperature. How did you do? Give yourself 1 mark for each one that you got correct. Question 2. Look at this graph. You need to say what factor is limiting the rate of photosynthesis at point A and at point B. So give yourself some time. If you want more time, pause the video now. So at point A, it's carbon dioxide concentration that's limiting the rate of photosynthesis, because in this part of the graph, if you give the plant more carbon dioxide, the rate of photosynthesis increases. That's why the line is sloped upwards. But at point B on the graph, even if you give the plant more carbon dioxide, the line is flat, it doesn't go up, so the rate of photosynthesis doesn't change. So something else must be the limiting factor. So that could be temperature, or it could be light intensity. So you can give yourself a mark for either of those. So 2 marks, 1 for part 1 and 1 for part 2. Here's our final question, our final graph. This one's a bit trickier. So here we've got the results of 2 experiments plotted on one graph. We've got light intensity along the bottom, we've got rate of photosynthesis up the side, and we've got one graph at 20 degrees and one at 30 degrees. So you need to identify what the limiting factor is at point A and point B. And just like before, if you need more time, now is the time to pause the video. Just to mention, I'm developing some resources to go alongside these videos for those who'd like a little bit more support with their revision. If you're interested, check out the link to the online shop below. So, at point A on the graph is sloped upwards because as light intensity increases, the rate increases. So this tells us that light intensity must be the limiting factor. At point B, we know it's temperature that's limiting the rate of photosynthesis because the line at 20 degrees is lower than the line at 30 degrees, so the rate must be slower at 20 degrees, meaning that temperature is slowing it down. How did you get on with those questions? Put your score in the comments below so we can see how well you've done. If you feel you've got the hang of this topic, you might like to check out this video next. And I hope to see you again soon or smash some more biology revision.